Hey guys, welcome back to Final Sector. I'm Michael, as always, joined by Kyle. We're going to be breaking down the Australian Grand Prix that just happened, of which you were at, Kyle. So I wanted to start basically by just asking your opinions, because this is the first time that you've been to a full weekend live. I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on what was different and what you liked or preferred to live or the recording, or just your general thoughts of the live experience. So.
Yeah, I've thought about this a fair bit, because as you mentioned, I've been to a lot of like Thursdays and Fridays and Saturdays, but often it's the first race, so I kind of want to see it at home watching it to kind of, get the idea of what's going on for the year. But it helps this year that I had some mates that were coming in to go with, and it was the third race of the year, so it was kind of like a win-win, saying, well, bloody hell, if I'm going to do it on one year, I'll do it on this year. So I was just in the kind of general admissions. If you saw all those giant crowds in the hills, that's where I was in the mosh pit going on out there.
You were in the back of a Johnny Herbert photo when he was in one of those old school F1 cars. So
if you haven't seen it yet on the Sky Sports piece, if you watch Johnny Herbert in the Williams when he's coming back and he's talking about his expectations for the race, if you look in the background, you might see a familiar face sitting there looking like he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't want to do anything silly because they won't use the cut. So I'm just like, yep.
Yes. Hello, sir. Yes.
Hello, Mr. Johnny. I didn't realize he was in the car until I heard him talking. I went, oh, it's Johnny. I thought it was just some random bloke and they were taking a photo of him.
It's a very distinct voice, isn't it? Yeah.
Yes, and I saw his hairline. I was like, I know that hairline.
That's funny.
I guess the experience itself, watching the race, I was curious what it'd be like. We did get in quite early, especially on the Saturday, Sunday. We chose basically the busiest point on the track, which is the turn 1-2 exit, because of course it's very popular. And this track, one of the downsides of being a spectator is it's quite a large kind of oval, so you really only get like very small snippets and not too many hills too, so you kind of eye line with the track. So we came in early and we plucked ourselves down the exit of turn 2. It was good because you had the screen as well, so you could actually watch what was going on through the race. For the race itself, I mean, the main thing that came out, which I didn't think about, was often when you're watching on TV and you're kind of seeing like the leaders and there's a bit of a gap forming, you kind of don't notice it growing over time. You kind of see like the number in the top left and the gap growing, each lap. But I guess because you visually often have both the cars in shot, you don't really notice it.
Sure.
But when you're there on the ground, you see the cars come through lap 1 and then lap 2 and then lap 3. And each time you notice the first car comes through and you really notice that the second one's coming through, how much later the second one comes through. And as well, because of the scale of the track you're actually there, you notice how much time it's actually like representative of. Like you see like 6-7 seconds on the screen, but when you're there it actually feels like so much time. Like they would come through Charles would come through T1, he'd go out T2, and then it would be quiet, and then Max would come through, and it would just seem like such a massive gap. Like even 6-7 seconds seems colossal, and it put in perspective of you see cars get lapped, or sometimes one car pull a bit of a performance gap, and sometimes you'll say, oh well, they're only like Mercedes for example, you can say, oh they're only 20-30 seconds off the pace. But when you see that physically, you see how much time actually that is in physical distance. It's like, it's amazing. It was something I kind of was noticing, and even everyone there, every lap Charles was ahead, everyone was going, oh my god, like he's so far ahead. And it helped. There was a lot of Ferrari fans there, which was good to see, so everyone was really excited, and every time he came by everyone was clapping and everything. So I think that's the main thing that stood out. But I mean, the atmosphere was great because it was absolutely packed to the brim there. I mean, as I say, there was almost everyone in gear. There was a crew of guys that were obviously from obviously Brazil and Mexico near us, because they were in like the classic luchador masks, and they had like giant Mexican flags and everything. And whenever Checo made a move, they were like, yeah, go, yeah, and everyone around them was like, calm down, he's up.
That's
so
awesome.
That was really good. Yeah. But it was good. I mean, as I say, it was nice to be able to follow it from the screen, but of course you really couldn't hear much of the commentary, and the commentary was on-track commentary, so some of it you were kind of guessing what was going on. I mean, we saw like, I actually got to see Max pull over, but no one really knew why and what was going on, so you kind of were guessing a bit, but it was nice to almost be in a big group of people that were also all guessing and reacting and everything. So, I mean, if you're a fan, you haven't done it, you've got to do it at least once, just for the atmosphere. Exactly, just for the atmosphere and the feeling. If I was to go again on a race day, I'd definitely be looking at like a grandstand thing. Again, I guess you get less of that kind of boxed in sardines energy type thing, but as a viewer, you do get to see a bit more in that. So that was my main takeaways personally.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I guess it's.
But it was. Go on.
I was just going to say, it is interesting to see like through the camera. The distances. you sometimes forget just how fast these cars are and how big these tracks are, because they just look so small on the screen. But yeah, I guess that's...
And even 3 seconds may seem small, but you see it in person, and 3 seconds is a long time. Like, it looks like it's just gone, you know?
That's real interesting. But anyway, before we'll get into the actual breakdown, I want to say welcome to our Spotify listeners. If this is your first time listening, we have uploaded. I think we uploaded the race preview. I'm not sure if I haven't even looked at the analytics of that. I have no idea if anyone listened to that. Probably not. But if you're here, that's awesome. Then either you can listen on Spotify or you can watch on YouTube. And there will be a little benefit to watching on YouTube for this one, because Kyle did get a little bit of footage of the Grand Prix while he was there. So we'll be putting, or Kyle will find
a few little clips up, maybe.
Yeah.
What a start!
But we'll get into the points that I've made for this one, and I've gone. It just kind of happened as I was making the points. They ended up being team by team. We sort of discussed this before we started recording, and we have to start with Ferrari. And specifically, I'm gonna the tagline that I've got is the dichotomy of the Ferrari drivers, because they both had very different weekends. Start with Charles. Obviously, he gets pole and pretty comfortably wins the race. It was just about the perfect weekend.
He runs away with it.
Yeah.
It was incredible. It's not like it was that easy. He had to deal with, 2 safety cars, you know. He had Max all over him when Max was still in the race.
On both safety car restarts,
Exactly. There was lots of drivers struggling with all sorts of things out there. We saw some intense graining, you know, temperatures and wind and everything. Even the sun is an issue there, you saw in qualifying, and yet he was just so comfortable. Like, you felt like you were watching Schumacher out there, you know. It was amazing just how comfortable it was. And I was thinking, it was funny, I was thinking back to preseason and a lot of people guessing, thinking, I reckon Sainz might still be able to beat Leclerc. And you and me are like, no, I think if things are good, he's going to pull out the magic. And this was the race where I went, that's the Leclerc that we knew was there, you know, was just a bit dormant last year. It was in full force all weekend. Even qualifying, like, his lap was... See ya, bye-bye. It was crazy.
Yeah, I mean, that car is just obviously working for him, but yeah, it's... I don't know who said it, one of the commentators saying, and I do believe it, is that Leclerc's just sort of stepped up to that other level where... I think we talked about it in one of our pre-season videos, talking about how Leclerc, he kind of needs to stop making those silly errors that he maybe might have made in the past. You know, we knew he had the speed and the pace, and the potential consistency if he could sort of grow out of or you know, get past making those silly errors like he would have made in the past. And yeah, I feel like he's made that step. He just didn't put a foot wrong all weekend. It was perfect. It was literally unstoppable. Like, on the other hand, we've got Carlos Sainz, who is very stoppable, as it seems.
Probably had the worst weekend of maybe his career, as far as I know. There was let's be upfront about it. He was plagued by a lot of little things that were out of his control, and a lot of things that he had to try and work around, right?
Yeah.
what I was thinking again in that phase is if Leclerc was in the same phase, I reckon he would have dealt with them a bit better, you know, like he would have kind of gone, okay, this is the case, I've just got to get on with it. I mean, even starting and qualifying for his last lap, I mean, he got unlucky in the red flag and that he didn't get his lap through. But then they had a problem with the starter getting the car up, and then he said he couldn't get his tire up to temperature, and then he had, you know, had the off. And I still feel like Leclerc in that could have at least put something together. And even on the radio and afterwards in the pit box, he's kind of like, oh, it was out of my control, and this and that, and da-da-da. You know, he was kind of like being a bit ranty and a bit blamey in that, which you can't blame drivers, especially when their adrenaline is going, and he knew he was quick all weekend. But I still felt like Leclerc in that point would have still, you know, being able to manage to put... I mean, how many times have we heard the team at Red Bull come out and say, oh, our car was an absolute dog, and yet Verstappen's up there doing things. Or Hamilton, and they're saying the Mercedes is a piece of crap, and Hamilton's still doing amazing things, you know, and you see that from Leclerc, and it's one of these instances where you've got Sainz and Checo where they're done fine when everything comes together, but... Yeah, and I mean, then we can go into it, right? How much did it actually unravel and...
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it really couldn't have got much worse. Like, obviously, it all started with that, 1 second too late crossing the finish line on that Q3 run, where he missed out, obviously, because of the red flag that came out during Q3, and is the new rules as of, I think was it last year they came in, where if you're on a hot lap and a red flag comes out at any point, it doesn't matter where you are, they just did
change a few of the flags after.
So he was like, it was like a second or less than a second from the finish line. The red flag came out. He was on like a lap that would have got him probably P3, P4.
I think they said it was fourth. Yeah. If he set no better lap, it would have kept him fourth.
And yeah, they deleted that lap, so he didn't get his first banker lap in, and then when he came out for the second part, he couldn't get the tires up to temperature, ended up starting P9, which, given that Charles comfortably put at P1, that's not a good result. Then during the race, during the start of the race, he dropped back to P14 because he just didn't get away from the line very well.
He had a bad start.
He had a really bad one.
Of note, he was one of the few drivers on the hards, but then on that note as well, we saw some great stuff from the other hard drivers. It's not like that was a bad thing. He just seemed to... He had that poor start, as you said. He really struggled on those hards, and then he faffed it up, didn't he?
Yeah, then got into the gravel trap, and that was him. That was him out. He just seemed to be... Ever since that one quali lap where the quali lap that should have been, I feel like he just got a bit flustered exactly, just tilted, and it just got worse and worse and worse. And I don't know, it just seems like this could be the weekend where Ferrari start to be like, okay, we're just going to make Charles the number 1 driver and you can be the number 2 driver, even though they're not going to explicitly say that. And so far they've been very open about saying, okay, no, we don't have a number 1 driver, we're going to we give them the same opportunities. It's not going to stay that way for long, and like this weekend is just another example of them probably... It's probably going to be moving towards them favouring Charles, because he's going to be the one that's going to win them the championship,
if
isn't
they
it?
need to. I mean, the other side of course is Charles is now, even so early on, has quite a sizable lead. That even if he was up there, it's not like they'd go, you know, hey, we need to give you the place. They're kind of like, this is fine because everyone else is still a while way back. But if it did come up, or you know, they needed to put him in a position to keep him out there to hold up another driver, you can see some of that coming to play, because you already know that Red Bull are going to do it with Checo, right? There's no doubt about that. So if Max comes into play, they've got to keep that in mind.
Do you think it's now officially Leclerc's championship to lose? Because it's kind of feeling that way. I know it's only 3 races, but it feels like now this is Leclerc's to lose. I
know it is only 3 races. I mean, I was even thinking it before I listened today to a few of the analysis from like the race in the BBC, and even they were asking each other, you know, even semi-unironically saying, is it his championship now to lose? And they all kind of went, well, it is, because that car is amazing. Even when the Red Bull is up to pace, which we'll get onto, it looks fragile. The Mercedes is still a while away, and yes, they're being consistent, but I mean, even as I saw on the track, the distance between them is that big that they're going to need a tremendous amount of work to even get back up to a point where they can challenge. And Leclerc just looks so good. The Ferrari just looks so good. It's kind of like, ooh, like, I don't know if it almost... because it's fresh and new, it doesn't put a damper on the fact that there's already such a big lead. Like, if this was, like, Hamilton up there with such a big lead, it'd be like, oh my god, please not again. Yeah. But it's the fact that it's so new and fresh blood that I like it. But I almost think there's a bit of hope where we're saying, look, we know that the Red Bull is quick, they've just got a bit to work out, but that's okay because we don't mind it's Ferrari, and say with the Mercedes, right? So, but it's certainly, to go back to your actual question, he's to lose. He's bloody, he just looks calm, confident, composed. I mean, he was even out there, even in qualifying, bouncing around like a bloody lunatic heading around that back section.
Was
and he
so
came
bad.
out. I know, and he even comes out and he says, I don't really mind it. And he, even in the analysis with, I think it was with Karun, and he was kind of talking about it, and he said, yeah, no, heading into that left-right chicane, he actually can't see his point because he's bouncing, but he's just kind of so confident, he just knows when to turn in, and then he's just fine. And it's like,
that's unreal.
God, he's going through all that. He doesn't even comment about it as a problem. He's just like, that
just gets on with it.
It's part of driving. It just shows his mindset is like, he's been preparing for this all his life. And as we say, he stepped up to the year, it's presented it to him, he's gone, I'm ready. And
fucking hell.
Oh man, what a start. What a bloody start.
It's ominous for anyone else who could potentially challenge, but let's move on to someone who could potentially challenge. Let's move to Red Bull. And my point is Max's title fight already over? Maybe that's a bit much, but
don't know about over, but
they're
very much on the back foot. Big question mark, let's say, right, is the answer.
Their reliability at the moment is among the worst, if not the worst. You know, that's 2 out of 3 races that he's retired from. That's 3 out of 6, including Checo's first race. They're literally half of their 3 races in, half of 50% retirements. That's not good. That's not good. That is... that could put them in a position not even to take them out of the title fight. That could drop them to like 3rd, 4th in constructors or drivers. Like, that's enough to drop them that far.
You do need to. I mean, look, you can see that Mercedes, despite having nowhere near the pace of them, like, they were kind of keeping up with Checo, but Checo was kind of just being safe, I think, a bit like, okay, let's be a bit safe here. Mercedes is still, they're ahead of them in the constructors, and you could say in a few races they get their act together, well then maybe they're fighting for second, and you know, they should have this giant lead over them easily. And the other thing as well is it seems like these issues are kind of just all popping out of nowhere. Like, we had the first retirements, and they had like the alleged issue with like the fuel pump and the overheating or something weird they didn't expect, and then this time they were saying it was actually like a pipe or something that they think has burst in the engine. That was, and it's just like, what? Like, they're kind of just discovering all these issues out of nowhere they didn't find it. It's like, well, what bloody else is going to go on? Is this also what's been affecting the Alpha Tauris, or what's been going on with them? So it's very ominous.
It's not
like,
good.
Okay, if they at least had the reliability there, then they'd say, oh, they're a bit off the pace, but but it's not their concern at all. Even
because of the way the engine freeze works, you want to have a really powerful, unreliable car, because you can, under that freeze, under those regulations, you can actually change parts of the engine for reliability purposes.
That might have been it.
But you can't change anything for performance. So if you've got the performance there, and you can, maybe it's unreliable now, the only problem is that you might have to sacrifice this year with the reliability problems to get it under control for 2023, 2024. But they can actually make tweaks for reliability reasons, but not for performance reasons. So I don't.
It might have been the case where it was saying as a positive almost. They're saying that at least they've got the pace there.
Yeah, I don't know if that's actually the case, but that would just be my thinking. It would make the most sense. So. But I mean, at the moment, it doesn't matter how fast our engine is if they can't even win the race, or they can't even complete the race, rather.
Finish.
So, but like, even then, it's like Max couldn't challenge that Ferrari. Like, he could on the restarts a little bit, for like half a lap, and then Charles would fuck off in the 3rd sector, and he's out of DRS, and it's like, he just can't get close again. I think he started to kind of match Charles's pace before whatever fucking pipe burst in his engine, but you just feel like, oh, he's matched his lap, he's gone for a fastest lap, and then Charles will just go out and do a faster one. You just kind of felt like that was always going to be the case. So
And we even saw that towards the end when Charles was the fastest man out there, and he kept calling on the radio saying, "Can I do the fastest lap?" His engineer's almost like, "You're just doing it already. Like, just drive around at the pace you are." And in the last lap, he sent it and still just blitzed it to go, "By the way, this was the sandbags." And we're like, okay.
Do we want to talk about? I mean, Checo got P2, so he kind of salvaged a little bit for Red Bull. Apparently, whatever issue they actually said on the radio, because Checo was worried after Max's retirement, they said it was more an issue with Max's car. They weren't worried for Checo's, but I think he's right to be a little bit worried given the track record so far. But it's still a good result. At least he brought home some points for Red Bull. He's kind of kept them in it, even though I think they're probably still third. I don't even know. All I know is that Mercedes is second.
Yes.
So, so they're still kind of there, but for every time one of the cars doesn't complete a race, that's Ferrari ramping on ahead. I mean, Carlos didn't complete this one, so it's kind of helped out a little bit by keeping them a little bit, keeping them sort of in line a little bit, but
in line-ish. But when the fact is, if you take Charles alone as a sole driver, he still has more points than any other manufacturer, right? So he could be up there by himself.
Very true.
Which goes to show the job that he's doing. But a lot of interesting talking points heading to Imola for Red Bull, that's for sure.
100%. So we did mention Mercedes briefly. Let's move on to them. Have Mercedes found some pace? They actually looked pretty good this weekend.
Yeah, I don't know if it was a case of finding pace. I think just in terms of their race management, I think they were kind of... It's hard to say it, because when you go from Mercedes down, I've got a bit of a theme here where there has been a bit of like a mix-up, and I believe I messaged you, I think it was, I don't know if it was just after the race or something, where I said it seemed like that a lot of this was quite track specific, because although this track is similar to Jeddah, it's still quite unique in a different sense, and it's a different time of day, and it has a different track texture and all of those kind of factors, right? And all you need to do is look from, even who was struggling at Q3 that had been blitzing Q1, the previous race before, or rather the other way around, because you start with Q1, right?
Yes.
Not Q3. Yeah. So those teams that were struggling to get
How long
out of
have you been
Q1
watching Formula One?
I don't remember if it's 1, 2, 3 or 3, 2, 1. I every time I got to second guess it. But yeah, so like even not going into them now, but even like the Haas's and that, right, were struggling in the Alphas. But you go the previous weeks, they were easily, kind of top of the midfield kind of thing. So I think Mercedes are more just showing again that they're aware of where they are. They kind of have found like a working point with the car, but they can't really push it at all. And really, their main competitors this weekend was McLaren. And I think McLaren, to say that McLaren was their main competitor is a good sign for McLaren, given, you look at them back in Bahrain and what was happening and the fear coming here. So that was a great point for the Aussie fans, given how popular their two drivers are in Australia especially. It almost seems to be their trend now where they're saying, look, while we've still got a lot of pace to find, we're kind of just running with what we've got, still utilizing our strategy and our two good drivers and kind of just banking what we can. And that's what they did again. They kind of just gave their drivers a car which they could set a good lap with, and they both set a pretty good lap, and then they just kept it safe and kept it steady and did faff around with their drivers, took advantage of a safety car and brought it home. Still, the gap to the front, when you look at it from that, you realize is big, but they're still at least a little bit comfortably ahead of that midfield gaggle, it seems. They might get a bit mixed up in there as we're seeing going forward, but they're still kind of like got their baseline, I think, now, and they're kind of like going, okay, we can be kind of comfortable here. We're not too far back. It's not big red flags. Now, what's the 6-month plan to now get out of this spot, right?
Yeah. I guess we mentioned the porpoising, the bouncing of the Ferrari earlier. The Mercedes was doing it. The big theme was that the Ferrari was doing it down that sort of lakeside straight, but the second they braked for that corner through the chicane, the car stabilized and they could get into it. And the Mercedes was still bouncing as it was braking and going into that corner, so like they could not do that chicane.
And they had a few attempts at it.
Yeah. It was not pretty. Every onboard, I'm sitting there, I'm just like, I don't know how you're making this corner, because the car's just doing I don't know how you're keeping it in any sort of racing line. So there's obviously still pace to find in that car, obviously. They need to get on top of that, though. Like, it's now 3 races in. It looks like they're no closer to fixing that issue.
They were pretty open in saying, even going into this weekend, of course, everyone was saying, have you got the new parts? And they're saying, there's not going to be parts for a while. And I think that's more of where they're saying, let's just do the best of what we can, but we realize there's no point throwing little things at it. This is a big conceptual, kind of change. They're still adamant that the direction they're going down is the one that they want to continue going down.
Yep.
Which I would agree. I'd say they wouldn't have gone through this, with how big Mercedes are in terms of how good they've managed changes in the past. They've obviously seen something they like.
Yep.
They've been very open in saying that this isn't correlating to what they're seeing in the system, but they're getting close to kind of identifying what the difference is, and it's a matter of going, okay, how do we then amend that so what we're seeing on the data and the track matches? And they said as well, look, bringing 2 cars home is perfect because they had a good solid run, data on each tyres in different conditions of following cars, and they really are labeling these races, I think, as like extra test sessions for them. They're still trying to get to grips with it.
Which, to be honest, getting a P3 and a P4 in a glorified test session,
exactly,
not fucking
that's why
bad.
They were quite happy.
Not bad.
Like, we know we're at the front, but this is the best we can do with what we've got. We can't change the past.
Yep.
But going forward, we're hitting all our boxes we need to move ahead. So
Yep.
if we do want to see them follow up, or even have 3-team fight for at least race wins, later this year. I know. Then it's tantalizing. They're looking hopeful. Then don't look totally lost. They've got a bit of confidence there, but they definitely are asking their fans to be a bit patient.
Yeah, might be second half of the year, unfortunately. But
yes,
we'll see.
Yep.
All right, we again mentioned it very briefly. The team fighting with Mercedes this weekend was McLaren, and my point is, are McLaren good again? They did a lot better. They weren't like second worst team like they were in Bahrain. So again, they just looked every race so far. They're just looking a little bit better.
They looked where we expected them to look coming in.
Yeah,
they did
exactly.
attribute. I will say, I think they did attribute that the braking zones here are the lightest they've had all year, and
very
that
true.
Makes it so they can run the car a bit differently with a bit less cooling and everything, because that's of course been their Achilles heel since testing, as we know. I think as well it just shows an overall theme that we kind of proposed early on, which is saying the midfield could really just to and fro in any sort of race. And I think again that's kind of what we're seeing here. But still, it was good signs to see them out there, able to fight, able to set some good lap times. Of course, that motivates the drivers and the team and everyone, knowing that, hey, this is an example that when we do line our cards up right, we can do this. And it was good to see them honestly battling a bit with the Mercedes. It was quite a nice sight to see the 4 of them kind of running nose to tail. That's good, from the track side. It was cool to see. So
I just kind of want them to be at the. It just feels wrong not having them sort of top of the midfield, doesn't it? Like it just.
When they went through so many years of building back up, it's kind of like that. You don't see an Alpine up there. You go, oh, they should stay up there, because you feel like they're still more just up there because they've gotten things right temporarily. But McLaren, with all these changes and everything going through, you're like, if they're not up there, it's like, come on, guys, that's you put in all this bloody good effort and showing, just
to drop back again,
really, exactly.
I think again, similar to Mercedes, I think there is a good package there. I think they just need to again get on top of their issues, like pretty much every other team that isn't Ferrari. Just get on top of their issues, and then they'll be there. But McLaren could very much be fighting with Mercedes if they keep that sort of pace. It's kind of hard to judge. Again, like you said, it's been a bit all over the place. Particularly this race, there was a few questions in. I'm just going to move on to the next team, because in contrast to are McLaren good again, are Haas shit again. They were nowhere. Like they looked so good those first 2 races, and then they come here, and even in qualifying, it's just like, where the fuck's their pace gone?
They were very uncomfortable. They just didn't hook it up. They couldn't get a setup together. I guess it didn't help. On a theme we might touch on at the end, but they were saying that this was the first proper race out of them all where it felt like where you qualified was really a big deal, because it was a bit tricky to pass in the race, and there was a lot more trains and kind of separate kind of groups of cars breaking up quite quickly. But they again, you wouldn't say that they were like the Haas of old, but certainly maybe the Haas of 3 or 4 years ago they more look like, right, kind of dabbling, trying to scratch at a chance to get lucky on a safety car strategy to get a point, but otherwise they're dabbling in that P12 to P16 kind of area. I didn't necessarily look for too much from them. I just generally felt it was a bit of kind of like, yeah, we just realized that this isn't our strong place, but we're still feeling good because the start of the year was positive. So I think, again, just even more showing that these cars, I think, are pretty hard for even teams to set up week by week. And sometimes you get it right, sometimes you get it wrong, and there's still a lot of learning for everyone to do. And
there might not be
it changed on a dime like that.
Yeah, exactly. Still. There might not be just a standard pecking order for this midfield. It might just flip flop race to race, like you say. So, which if it's going to flip flop that drastically, that's insane. Like I don't think we've seen anything quite that drastic. If that's going to be a constant, I don't think we've seen anything like that for a long time. So. It was nice to see Haas up there, so I kind of hope that he is just sort of. I think they said it was just set up. If hopefully it is just set up, or if it's just track dependent, they're just this is just a tricky track for them because I do. It's nice to just see Haas back at the top of the midfield like they were when they started. I just don't want to see them at the back again. I've seen enough of that. They've done so much. So, I'm just kind of hoping that this maybe is just a one-off for them. But, it remains to be seen. So, let's move on to the team that probably had the worst weekend. And I know you already... my point... Okay. So, I've got here Crashton Martin, or alternatively... Aston Martin, as in ass.
Nice, very good.
Take your pick. Put both on the screen, and I don't know, it's fine. So, let's go through Aston Martin's weekend. From the top. So, we had Vettel, who had an engine issue during FP1. He did about 18 laps, so it's not too bad. But, didn't get out for FP2 at all. Had his fun little scooter boy thing around the track, gets a €5,000 fine for that. Stroll then decided he wanted to crash near the end of FP3. Vettel crashed early in the FP3. They just managed to get his car out for one run in Q1 after a red flag. Why the red flag, you ask? Well, Stroll decided to crash into Latifi, of course. Gets a 3-place grid penalty. Now we get to the race. Vettel crashes during the race, lap 23, out of the race. Awesome. Stroll gets a 5-second penalty for weaving on the straight and drops out of the points. What a fucking shit weekend for Aston Martin. My God.
And on Vettel's return as well.
He's fucking,
a horrible return.
I was writing all this down. I'm like, I'm still missing stuff. They really had all this shit go wrong with them. Just all weekend.
Did you put the numbers together to figure out how much of a bill that is for the team?
It's too much. Far too much. It's absurd. It's got to be one of the worst weekends for a team that in a long time that has like a lot of money. It's not a team that is like with the fucking life engine or something. They're not sitting at the back with this like unreliable
They've
POS.
Just spent probably more on their infrastructure than any team has.
Exactly. Yeah. They wanted to be fighting for championships in 3 years, and this is what they have. This is what it's come to, and it's like they're the only team now to not have a championship point this year after...
Isn't that saying something? Doesn't that say a lot about it? Third race, and they're the only team, and when you go...
That's so bad.
After testing and everything else.
Yeah. I mean, Vettel was... he was a weird one. Again, didn't race in the first 2 weekends. He got next to no running in free practice. He had exactly one run in Q1, and then...
In a car that they said they didn't do any setup on at all. They just put the default setup on.
Yeah,
so
exactly. So you can kind of understand why he obviously was not comfortable in that car at all. And you can sort of understand that. Stroll was... that...
You just saw the worst side of Stroll, didn't you?
He's just a bit of a numpty sometimes, isn't he? Sometimes he just forgets how to be a driver in Formula One. I don't really know what else to say. If he hadn't done his weird weaving shit down the straight and gotten that penalty, he could have very well gotten the point that Albon ended up getting for P10, which we'll touch on briefly a little bit later. But where do Aston go from here? Because this has to be the lowest of low points for them this race. So it's surely it's only up from here. But I mean, there's still comfortably the weakest car on pace. Where do they go? What do they do?
They've got enough there to at least, I think, on a good weekend when they put it together to get at least 10th or 9th or potentially into 8th, right? You wouldn't say that far back,
Stroll was there, yeah.
Yeah, you just don't see, like, it's either from the drivers or from the strategy or from the setup or something, that it's just like, it seems it's so hard for them to just connect all the dots that everyone else seems to actually gotten a hand of this year, so they can at least do it at some point. And it's kind of just like, oh...
It's just a disaster.
All the pieces are there, they've just completely forgotten how to put them together, and it's coming from a team that a few years ago used to be the team, you know, that would take advantage and be the underdog and would spend the least amount to get the most out of it, right? That's why I used to follow them for so many years, because I love that, and now it's just a complete shell of its former self, and it's...
Yeah, spending all this money getting nowhere at the moment, so...
You wonder why some of the reasons why Otmar might have left to go to a different team.
Yeah.
Maybe he, you know...
I wonder why. Who could have known? I wonder where the red flag starts. Anyway, let's... we did briefly talk about Williams, so we'll move on to them with Albon's no-stopper, effectively.
The tyre whisperer.
Fucking hell,
that was the one thing where we're on the floor that was really confusing, because you saw everyone going out there and you kind of heard occasionally going, oh, a few drivers haven't stopped, and you go... Who is it? And you go, no, Albon has to be one of them, because how would he get up to 7? He wasn't there.
Yeah.
And then they kept going, and then they were like, everyone was getting ready for the end, and they looked up, and I was like, he's still up there. It's like, what the bloody hell's going on?
Yeah. It was weird.
And then I realized, go on.
I was gonna say, I was just watching the broadcast, and like, you know, he was one of the ones that started on the hard tire, which is why obviously went so long. But you know, he had ample chances with the safety cars to get like a cheap stop, and he was just like, no, I'm gonna take track position. I'll take track position. And he had like a really good chance to, it was like lap 37, 38, 39 ish, which is about the length of, most people had the hard on for about that amount of time before they switched off. Like, that was sort of the limit that the drivers had on. You think, oh, perfect, there's a, you know, it was either a virtual or a full safety car.
It was a VSC, but I think they said that it didn't come out at the right time for him.
He might have been too far around the track. So actually that could be a good point. So yeah, maybe he was forced to stay out, but fair play to him. He apparently still had pace on that tire and like 50 laps in. He was paired with Ocon the whole race. It was mainly him and Ocon kind of in a bubble of their own for 7th and 8th. And you saw Ocon was right behind him, and then every lap that comes through, Ocon was behind him. And then he started to gap on Ocon, and then he pulled out quite a big gap on Ocon. You're like, what the bloody hell? Is there a problem with Ocon, or has he just found pace? And he even set off the race. He just said on that hard, once it worn down a bit, he was just really comfortable. And it actually showed that, you know, yes, he kind of... Well, it's not even the case of where he lucked out kind of due to strategy, due to luck, because he kind of did stop under a racing condition. And if you think about it, the grid bunching up after safety car wouldn't have helped him, because that would have put the guys at a box closer to him, right? If he's not boxing under those conditions. But he showed that, I mean, both that the Williams has decent pace when it's in the right window, and that he's, as we predicted coming back, is in comparison to Latifi and his overall weekend. Yeah, well, he put out a stunner, and then they boxed him, and there was kind of the word going, oh, but is he going to fall out? And he just got out ahead of... I thought he was going to fall out of the points for sure, yeah.
Yeah, everyone assumed that, but as I say, he just was able to pull ahead of Ocon, so they weren't really fighting, so he could just focus on his pace, keeping the tyres in check, and he just got out of Zhao Guanyu, and then you had finished and you looked up and you went, he's in 10, and it was like, hey!
It's unreal, yeah. I couldn't quite believe it. Like, and he only just managed to get into the pits in time as well, because he was like just ahead of Charles. Like I'm talking like 10 seconds ahead of Charles on track, and on he was on the penultimate lap, and Charles was on the final lap. So if he was behind Charles, he wouldn't have been able to pit that lap. So. He picked obviously the perfect opportunity to go in.
People are asking what happens if he goes into pit and then he gets lapped while he's getting serviced. It's like, is there a rule for it? I imagine there might be something like you still have to kind of do your lap, maybe, but maybe there's a risk that Charles is slowing down. So I don't know. Maybe
it's you have to just pass the actual finish, like start finish line area. But then again, I guess that's with the different pit boxes.
You
That's
can't
a bit
like pull
unfair.
the,
Or
what was it, the Schumacher of days when he
Yeah, well.
pit for his penalty on the final lap
Yeah.
and it counted. And everyone's like, "What?"
True. Yeah, I'm not sure. Yeah, I wonder what they would do there.
But still, they timed it perfectly.
Yeah.
They, as I said, they took us the last minute, and he got a point for it.
Yeah.
Which, as you say, to his credit, it was through his pace and the strategy. Which these regulations are gonna. They're trying to show this is that you can run your race differently, set your car up differently, and you don't need luck to sometimes get, in that position where you get a point as the underdog team. You can just do it through good pace and good strategy. So bloody kudos to the team and him.
Yeah, well done. Well done for sure. We've only got a few teams left. We'll touch on them. I wanted to talk about Alpine because there was a couple of interesting things, specifically with Alonso. Alonso was on what potentially could have been a fucking incredible Q3 lap. The lap. I think he was up in Sector 1 and he was purple Sector 2. And then he got stuck in 4th gear, I think, coming into T11.
He was downshifting and then he got to 4th, and as he got to apex when he tried to go to 3rd, car didn't go to 3rd. And then he kept flapping it, and then the steering wheel locked up, and
yeah, so there's a suspected hydraulic issue, and he was just on such a fucking good lap. Like, I don't know where it would have ended up putting him, but
easily could have been P2, I reckon. P1, I don't think so. After that, at that time, it would have been P1 for sure. But as it all played out, at least. Well, it was top 3, I reckon, easily.
Right?
And the stab in the back of the neck was that he felt that he had great race pace too. So imagine starting up that high, he probably could have fought and controlled for a podium, and we saw how things played out. That would have been very realistic, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Unfortunately, during the race, he did he kind of cooked his tires during his first stint. He was sort of. He was like an Alonso train with about 4 or 5 other cars behind him. So I think he was kind of getting pressured to maybe use the tyres a little more than he would have wanted, and ended up starting to get overtaken with the DRS as well. He got overtaken a couple of laps in a row, went backwards. After he pitted, he couldn't quite overtake through the field himself.
It was strange because he started on the hards, right, and he was actually able to take advantage, I believe, of a safety car pit stop. So from that perspective, I think he was a bit behind a train in, I don't remember where it was about that midfield. He was behind a train, but he was in fresher tires than all of them.
So you thought he was just going to go straight.
But then he started to go out, and there was in a good battle, and then you saw his onboard, and I think you saw the front left, and it looked hideous, and you went, what the hell has he done? And then an AlphaTauri went by, and a Haas went by, and he was on the radio going, oh, this is horrible. And you went, what the hell happened?
Yeah, it's not great. I mean, it shows at the very least that Alpine again it's such a Renault thing as well. Like, they just qualify so well. They've just raw pace. And then they
flash of just there it is.
But then the race, whatever the race pace, it's something. It's always something during the race where they just don't have the same as everyone else. In saying that, I mean, Ocon did get a P7. I think he kind of benefited a little bit more from those pit stops, the safety cars and whatnot. So he kind of got into a good position. I mean, he drove a tidy race to get that P7, so at least get Alpine some points. But it's just a track that maybe doesn't suit them because they've looked good in the first 2 races. Even on the race pace, they've looked really, really strong, particularly at Jeddah. I mean, they looked really, really good. They look like 3rd best team, easy. So
easy.
Yeah, so again, maybe it's just like a track-dependent thing. Maybe that grading, the whatever temperatures and the abrasion of the circuit, and it just affects the tires on their
so many
car.
factors that we just don't have enough races to
exactly.
be able to say.
So,
it's why it's so hard to analyze this. All you can really do is kind of look at the drivers and the team's body language, and if they come last but they seem calm, you go, okay, there's not much up. But if they, are finishing midfield but they seem unhappy, you go, ooh, maybe there's something going on here.
Yeah. So I mean, I assume we'll see Alpine back up again, possibly at some other races again. I hope this isn't them going backwards and doing their Renault thing again, but we'll see. It's the 3 races in, so
it's hard to say. It's very hard to say. Yeah.
But all right, we'll touch on these last 2 teams. There's not really much to say because they were both pretty quiet. Alfa Romeo, Bottas in the points again. Zhou Guanyu just misses out. I think he gets 11th. Yeah, very, very close in the end. But it's a pretty tidy race again from Alfa Romeo. They're sort of showing that all three races they're sort of there or thereabouts in the middle to upper midfield at the moment. So that's good. They both finished this time. That's good. They didn't have a weird starting issue as far as I could tell. They didn't have weird gearbox issues.
I don't think so. No, they both started pretty well.
Yeah, so it's that's a bonus. So maybe they've gotten a hold of their issues and maybe fixed some of those.
Because they struggled in qualifying as well, right? They weren't qualifying too hot. And
they weren't.
I think both their starts were pretty good.
Yeah, so I mean, it's good to see them sort of in the mix. Awesome.
Just there, right? That's what we wanted to do. We didn't want to see a clear back marker or a team or two really struggling. We kind of just wanted to see at least everyone have potential to be there. I'd still argue those that are struggling, you can still see that potential there rather than going the Williams of late and going
true. And
the House of late rather, sorry.
And then AlphaTauri, they were sort of running in a similar to Alpha. They were running really tidily. I think both of them were even running in the points at some point. But they both got really unlucky with the safety cars and the pit stops, and I think they both pitted just before that first safety car came out, would have been second safety car with Vettel when he went into the wall.
Pretty mad timing, they didn't exactly luck out.
Yeah, so they dropped way back, and they just didn't quite have enough pace to do a huge amount. I think Gasly did he get points? I think he did just sneak into the top 10. He got ninth. Yeah, so still got there in the end. Tsunoda he just couldn't really get back up there at all.
He was in that little train of 12th down, really just ejected from the gap, and I think they were victim to I think it was Alonso who was at the head of that train. You saw a car once they passed him was just gone, right? So it was one of those cases of a bottleneck. So.
But yeah, it's that's all I've got. I don't know if there's anything else you wanted to mention. I think we've just about covered everything though. So we're moving to Imola next week, which is it's a different track again.
Very different.
I don't even know what to expect from this one because it's such an old school track. But we'll get into that one in the Imola race preview.
Lots of red in the crowd.
Oh, there will be. Yeah, that's the one thing we will know. So, but yeah, let us know your thoughts on this race. It's definitely a weird one with the switching of the teams in terms of where they are. So it's kind of hard to get a gauge of where we think the pecking order is because it feels like it changes every race. So, but let us know your thoughts in the comments if you're watching on YouTube. If you're listening on Spotify, then you can at us at Final Sector YT. Let us know your thoughts and join us when we release our the Imola race preview, which I think it's in 2 weeks, isn't it? The race.
So something we might be recording a Spotify podcast.
Oh yes, that's right. We're going to be doing that first, aren't we? Yeah. So if you're on Spotify, you'll be getting this one a few days early. It's a full-length podcast. We'll be chatting about a few different things. Don't worry, YouTube. You will still be getting it just a few days later. But if you do want to hear it early, we're going to try and release it. What is today? Monday. We're going to try and release it this weekend, I think. We're going to try and get it on Spotify.
Just after the weekend, something like that. So, and also, let us know your thoughts about the changes to the track. Do you think it worked?
Yeah.
Do you think it didn't work? I'm curious to see what people say on that as well.
We'll talk about more of that on the podcast, I think, as well. We'll go into it a bit more. So, but yeah, awesome. Thanks for listening and watching, everyone. We'll see you on the next video or the podcast. Thanks for watching.
Take care.